Hello YouTube, this is Asatsu5 and I'm here to teach you about the legend of the sakatripas. That's this knife right here, or the tranchete. I think the tranchete is the more formal name of this knife, but it's also called the sakatripas. This knife blade concept can be found in Spain, Italy, and I think France. But I think it's got its main appeal from Mexico. I think it's the Mexicans that really made it famous. And I'm going to tell you why. Like I said, this thing's called the sakatripas. What does sakatripas mean? It means disembowel, gut out, or gut removal. And so this knife design has some elements that are familiar to us, people who like the Navaja craca. It has the teeth, it has this back spring on it. This is a pull ring, and that's the main locking bar right there. And there's the knife. I'll zoom out for you. But this is the sakatripas, the gut removal, gut out knife. And this knife is famous as a fighting knife. And you're probably thinking, man, that's a really strange fighting knife. The lock's on the bottom. The handle's kind of weird. And I thought the same thing. I've came across this knife several times on eBay when looking up Navajas on eBay. And I didn't quite understand it. But after hearing some people talk about it on Instagram and YouTube, I became fascinated by it, and I thought I needed one for my collection. Now, this knife has a variety of uses that I've read online, and there's not a lot of information on these knives online. I think there's a book written about them called Roots in Texas, that's out of print that I'd love to have. I'd love to find it and own it. But there's a lot of oral tradition about this knife. Some people say it's a pruning knife. Some people say it's a leatherworking knife or a shoemaking knife. Some people say it's a goat hurdles knife for castrating goats and slaughtering them. But it's called the sakatripas, the gut knife or disembowel, because it was famous for how it was used in combatives. Keep in mind, the Navaja was the only tactical photo in town for a long time. This developed shortly after. This was actually a gravity knife. And anyways, you held it edge up, and all your cutting angles are edge up. This is fascinating because us who are really good fans of the Bowie knives have heard our whole lives that Bowie knives were fought with edge up. So you might have similar techniques there. And I know that the Bowie knife had similar techniques to the Navaja and the Punya because I found a newspaper article telling civilians or citizens how to fight with the Bowie knife. It's the only historical document I could find that showed people how to fight with the Bowie knife. And it was very similar to the Bowie knife treatise that not Bowie knife treatise, but the Navaja treatise that I have on my Kindle. I'll show you a picture of that cover right here. Anyways, it seems that people fight with Bowie knives a lot like the Spaniards fought with knives, or the Spanish. But, and I don't think there's a lot of back cutting or anything like that with the Bowie knife. I just haven't found any evidence for that, and if Bill Bagwell would like to share his sources, I'd love to share them with you. But it seems like that James Keating, Bill Bagwell, they're the only people that I'm seeing that talked about those techniques. I love his knives, and he is the king of Bowie knives, but I just haven't been able to find anything that really backed him up with my research. Anyways, back to this. Bowie knives will fight edge up. This is fought with edge up. In fact, it is very uncomfortable to hold this knife with the edge out. These knives come in many different sizes. They were traditionally made with goat horn. This is some kind of horn right here. I don't know if it's specifically a goat horn. But it was interesting because they took the horn from the goat, or whatever animal they were using, and they made the blade to match the horn. So this is the dimension right here of this horn. So they made the blade to fit the horn. So all of these are a little bit different. You're going to have a blade matched to the horn. It's also worth mentioning that the YouTube video I watched on this before doing my own research talked about that this was the inspiration for banning gravity knives in Texas. And I don't know if this is true. There's a lot of oral tradition in Mexican knife fighting, or not Mexican knife fighting, but Spanish knife fighting. A lot of times it's the guy's uncle who teaches the boys how to fight with a knife. You see, the Spanish Empire spread their knife fighting techniques with the Navaja, and you see remnants of this in Puerto Rico, Argentina, Mexico. I think there's a little bit of it in the Philippines, but not as much. But you find a lot of Spanish influence in the knife fighting in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so there was a lot of oral tradition and not a lot of things written down, so it makes things difficult to confirm or to look up. But it is definitely fascinating and worth trying to find that information. So this knife was supposedly the knife that made gravity knives illegal in Texas. I think it's also worth mentioning that gravity knives were illegal in other places that were not in the Southwest and bordered with Mexico, which would make things like straight razors illegal, the World War II German gravity knives, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if this was the reason for Texas knife laws to be the way that they were, because I know that other places had bans on gravity knives. But it's definitely interesting that not only do Bowie knives fight edge up like this, but this was originally a gravity knife, and Texas had laws against gravity knives. Other than that, I can't really tell you if it's fact or fiction. Anyways, all your cutting angles are up. The goal of this knife was either to cut the belly or the neck. Now, there's other targets like the arms and stuff, but this is called the sakatripas, the disemboweler. So that was your go-to move. And I've tried filming this video several times, so I don't know what all I've said. But this is supposed to reminisce a snake, which is significant to Mexico. And I don't know, like I said, I'm not an expert in this. I hear that the gravity knives of the sakatripas are very old. And the locking mechanism came about in the 1950s and 60s. Then if you have one that says Hecho in Mexico or Hecho made in Mexico, then that is a 1970s vintage or later. Mine doesn't have made in Mexico, but it does have a locking mechanism, which should date this from the 50s and 60s. I don't know if that's absolute fact. This could be older, it could be newer, but that's just what I've been told. Anyways, this is very interesting to me. I've seen this knife all over eBay before discovering what it truly was. I found it when I was looking at Navajas, and I was like, man, that's a weird design. And there was a person that I came across called Ed Manifesto, or Ed Cadone. He has an Instagram. He's been featured. Well, he's a tactical guru, I guess you can say. He teaches self-defense and tactical skills, and he's based in Mexico. And he basically observes, watches, combats the cartel. He's a cartel expert, and he kind of combats the cartel. And he's learned a lot of dirty skills, that involve this violent subculture of Mexico, and he knows a good bit about this knife as well. And I think he's worked with a custom knife maker, JB Knives, and they've come up with their own friction photo version of this, which I would love to have, but I don't know how much it costs. I guess I'll have to DM them. I commented on their photo, but they never got back with me, so I guess I'll have to DM them. But they came out with a friction photo of this. Ed Cadone, or Ed Manifesto, also collaborated with Ernest Emerson and came out with a knife. And he's also the one that popularized the Victorinox fruit knife as a self-defense knife. and his influence on that concept was so much that people started making Kydex sheaths for Victorinox fruit knives and trainers. And the concept behind that fruit knife is that if you're going someplace and you can't travel with a knife, you just fly to the place that you're going, and then you go to a store and buy a fruit knife, a paring knife, or whatever you want to call it, and you can make a quick and dirty sheath, or you can carry the sheath with you, or whatever. If you have to throw away the knife, you can throw away the knife because it's so cheap, but that's your last-ditch option. And so I bought me a Victorinox fruit knife, or paring knife, and I'm going to play with that with battle blades. But very interesting guy. I've learned several things from him just through his Instagram and stuff that I'm going to make videos on in the future. But this is definitely a cool piece. Unfortunately, I don't know if you can see this, the horn is split, so I'm either going to have to epoxy that. I'm thinking about just wrapping string around it and covering that string with glue and fixing it that way, because the blade is kind of woppy-jawed. Get it to focus. The blade doesn't come all the way up, so I think I can tie that off and glue it and fix it, and it'll add to the longevity of this knife. But I'm very psyched to have it. It's a very interesting knife. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'm a Satsu 5, and I'm out.